So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming this morning. I'll begin with sharing some teachings, and then we'll have some opportunity at the end for questions. Questions are important. It may be interesting for those of you who come on Sundays on a regular basis, how a lot of the talks that are given are about how to practice, and not always about what to practice. Even though, there's plenty of what to practice given. But in our community, a lot of the what to practice, the exact teachings are given, or for anybody who is new, we have introductions to mindfulness practices, both dealing with the body and the breath and the emotions that people can take. We have orientations, as well as we have a whole series of what we call intensives, days of mindfulness, retreats, solitary practice. There are many interviews with a teacher on Thursdays. So for people who really want to get deeper into the practices that we do here, there are many opportunities, not to say that they're not talked about on Sunday. But for most practitioners, learning what the practices are is the easiest part. Remembering to practice them, how to practice them, how to apply them, that's more difficult. And so that is why traditionally lots of emphasis in the Buddhist tradition is put on the how-to and the application of, and not simply giving people the practice and let them go off and do it. And for many months now in our community, we have been looking at this teachings that are called in Tibetan the Lojong teachings, the mind training teachings. It's a for most of you who coming regularly know, it's a quite a well-known text that actually comes from India, went from India to Tibet in the 10th, 11th century, and has been practiced. These 7 points under which there are 59 brief one-sentence trainings really encapsulate not only the practices, but as importantly, how to apply them. And that's what we have been looking at for many, many months now. And we are, at least in my commentary, we're in the 7th point, which are called the guidelines. The guidelines, sort of the general guidelines of how to practice, sort of what we were talking about. And we've been using many texts. The shortest one is this one by Jamyang Kongtrul called The Great Path of Awakening. He was a 19th century Tibetan master. But I also have some translations by a modern-day American guy named Alan Wallace, who's also a wonderful teacher. And there are many books on the mind trainings that we've been looking at. So the one I'd like to begin with this morning under the guidelines, and again, for those of you who knew, you'd be surprised how short they are. It says, this time, practice the important points. Okay, so you can see you need commentary to understand, and that's what is always given. So I like this time practice the important points, because it implies what? It implies immediately that there have been many other times when we haven't. Okay, so we have to understand that there's a context in which this teacher is saying, this time practice the important points. So again, it's what is meant by this time, and what are the important points that we have to remember to practice this time. Now, in a traditional Buddhist culture like this teacher came from, this time could mean this lifetime. Okay, there's a sense traditionally that people have many lives. You don't have to believe that or not, but I'm just sharing this is where it would come from. People have many lives, and if in this life things have not been smooth, things have not been easy, things have not been wondrously successful in all ways, one might think, here I go again. Right? Here I go again. But again, I think this time, do it differently, is something we all know. Many people in our common culture, relationships tend to be difficult for people, and many people say, what? This time I'm going to do it differently. Right, I've learned from the past, and this time I'm going to do it differently. And not only just in intimate relationships, just a lot of conversations between parents and children, colleagues, where we've kind of messed it up in the past or had a negative reaction in the past. We say what? You kind of grit your teeth and you say, well, this time I'm going to do it differently, so I have a different result. So again, I think this self-awareness that one's approach in life in the past, and the past can be, as I say, past lifetimes, past relationships, past experiences, or it could even be yesterday, or it could even be an hour ago, right? Today, I'm going to do it differently, right? From now on, I'm going to do it differently, right? So I think this, again, they're very short, but I think implied in this is a real deep, not just, like with this whole thing, again, many people, they go through relationships, they break up, and then they say, what? This time I'm going to do it differently, and one would hope what? That they do. But what do we know? Oftentimes it it doesn't happen that way. So again, why not? Because obviously we haven't really learned it, have we? I mean, that's just the truth, isn't it? We've learned something, and we perhaps kind of understand something, but at some deeper level, we're not really ready to do it differently, are we? And so we often find ourselves, sometimes it's not as black and white, sometimes we may find ourselves kind of incrementally doing better. This is going a little better than the last one. This was not, the breakup wasn't as traumatic as the last one, so it must be getting a little better there. But you know what I'm saying, as opposed to really making a significant difference in our life. So this time, it says, practice the important points. Again, which implies what? That oftentimes in our life and all the activities, we are practicing or focusing on the unimportant points. And so understanding that life is an opportunity, and that we have to somehow understand what it is an opportunity for, is really essential for the kind of energy and the track that our life takes. So there is a commentary. This actual text was written by Chekwa Dorje, who wrote this down in the 12th century. But there is a commentary specifically on this one, now practice what is important, or practice the important points, by his disciple Seychelles Bouwa. And he has 5 things that he explains are the important points that we should remember. And the first one is, well, let me read all 5 first, okay? The first one would be spiritual practice over mundane pursuits. Second is practicing Dharma over talking about it. Third is the cultivation of bodhichitta over other practices. 4 is your mentor's personal guidance over teachings of the scriptures and logic. And 5th is inner practice over changing the place where you live. So there's a modernity to this, I think, which we find meaningful. So spiritual practices over mundane practices. Mundane pursuits. And then this again. I mean, this gets at the heart of our personal development, our personal transformation, our personal remediation of suffering, our personal self-improvement, whatever we are calling this journey that we may find ourselves on. Obviously, we are on whatever type of spiritual journey or self-improvement journey or whatever we want to call our journey for a reason. And usually that reason is a very heartfelt reason, isn't it? It really gets to the core of kind of how we are as a human being and how we're experiencing life, right? So usually the spiritual journey is about, again, the cultivation of certain kinds of way of being in the world, right? We want to be a kinder person. We want to be a more loving person. We want to be a more relaxed person. We want to be a more at ease person, right? So it has to do with these qualities. We want to be a more intelligent person. We want to be, come from wisdom in our life. So it has to do with the cultivation of a whole series of inner qualities of the mind, which then manifest in the way we talk with each other and the way we act with each other. But then when we actually look at our life and go, well, how much time and energy, right, am I giving to the cultivation of these kinds of practices or teachings that really, when I think about it, are right at the heart, right, of my existence, my heart of my being in the world and being with others and how it feels to be me and all that. How much energy am I putting really into that? And how much energy am I putting into what's called here mundane pursuits? And when they talk about mundane pursuits, they talk about all the activities of the world that relate to what's called in Buddhism the 8 worldly winds. What do we want in life, right? We want security. We want to be noticed. We want pleasure, right? We want to win. We want to gain. We don't want to lose. We want to be liked. We don't want to be disliked. We want to be noticed. We don't want to be unnoticed. We want pleasure. We don't want pain, right? So if we think about where I'm putting the energy of my life, am I not putting most of my energy into not only getting the worldly things that I want and avoiding the worldly things that I don't want, but even more significant than that, my emotional life and my mind states are so much predicated on how that's going, right? When it's going well, we're up. When it's not going well, we're down. And that up and down can not only be month by month, it could be what? Hour by hour, day by day, right? So, we're up, we're down, we're happy, we're unhappy, just on the very minutest kind of how the day is going in terms of, are things going my way or are things not going my way? Am I getting what I want or am I not getting what I want? Are people treating me the way they want or the way I want, or are people not treating me the way I want? Can you see? And if that is where we are attending to, and if that is what's really occupying our mind, if we're honest about, if we really are mindful of our mind and really aware of the kind of thoughts we're having and the feelings we're having and what's really, in our endless ruminations and obsessions, what are they about, right? And are they really about the important things, right? Which in my moment of clarity, in my moment of sanity, I know what is most important to me, and for me to be able to really relate in a very open, good way with other people, right? Especially the people in my life. Is that clear? And so, please pay attention that what he's saying, this is important. Now again, this is not a snap decision. This comes from reflection, right? It really comes on really stepping back from my life, really understanding, my spiritual pursuits, whatever they really mean to me, right? And again, if I really then look at what I'm doing all day, my priorities, etc., are they in sync? When I look at my mind, am I really, if I'm really tracking my mind and my mind states throughout the day, am I really cultivating understanding throughout the day? Am I really cultivating altruistic thoughts throughout the day, etc.? Or am I not? Am I just totally self-absorbed with how my day is going? Right? And if that is what one's doing, one can say, oh, I need to get real here about what I'm really cultivating. I say, this is the transformation I want. This is the healing I want. This is the end of suffering and dissatisfaction that I want. And yet when I look at how I'm living my life and what I'm thinking and saying and, interacting with, right? Is that clear? As well as, we have a culture, as you know, where we can endlessly waste time doing meaningless things. Does everybody know what a meaningless thing is? Right? I mean, we have names for it. We call them what? We say couch potato. It used to be called couch potato when TV was the big thing. Right? So people, for those who are younger, you might not have heard that because we've moved on. But a couch potato was somebody who what? What? Vegetated, sort of vegetated on the couch watching TV. I mean, and days would go by. Right? But now we have what? Now we have surfing, right? Internet surfing. There are many other things that we can do to fill up time, right? But that when we step back, we go, well, did any meaningful thing occur in the last 2 hours? And we'd have to say what? You see, but again, our problem is, and this is why there's no wisdom within us, is that we know it afterwards. Wisdom is to know it before. You see, that's when you're a wise person, right? You see clearly the choice is before you, and the wise person makes the right choice beforehand. Is that clear? Right? Now, you're getting wiser if, let's say, 15 or 20 minutes into it, you get it. All right? You see, that's still better than getting it 3 hours later. Is that clear? So there's no absolute here. We can become wiser because we remember. Ideally, when we're really wise, see, in this world, it's the world of cause and effect, right? Most people only see that their causes in a situation were mistaken only afterwards, right? When they see the results, screwed that one up big time. You know what I mean? That kind of, but the wise person can kind of get it before you do it. And you can kind of see, yeah, this is, if I do this, there's a good chance that could happen, right? So you want to be a wiser person. So, I mean, again, are there any questions about that? I mean, think about your own life. Are there any questions about this, the first commentary on this life, this now, practice what is important? And the first thing is, your spiritual practice over your mundane pursuits. Again, this does not mean, for those of you thinking that you have to go home and quit your job and end all your relationships and, tell your children they're on their own and, all right? So let's not go to extremes yet, okay? But it really has to do with, first, a change in our mind, okay, with its priorities and values, and then a kind of reordering, or a way of looking at what we do in our life with a sense of value and meaning. Right? Which implies that we are not just ping-pongs, just being knocked around by life and the worldly winds, but there's somebody, in the driver's seat of our life, right? Who is aware of where he or she wants to go and is driving the car accordingly. Right? So please reflect on that first point. And again, are there any questions or comments? Don't be shy if it's not clear. Yes.
It's clear, and it's very clear, because sometimes I see all that ahead of time, and yet I still make the wrong decision.
Well, again, I would ask yourself, why? You see what I'm saying? We want to be present to our own experience and go, well, why is that? So and this is not just an intellectual question. This is really going into yourself at that moment and go, well, I think I know better. Maybe I really don't. You see, that's kind of an honesty. You see, it's, for many of us, we like to see ourselves this way. we think that we are, kind of driven by more altruistic, and yet oftentimes we are not honest about the things that are really still driving us. And we need to be honest. We don't want our spiritual life to be something we impose, because it'll never work that way. Because our conditioning, which is the historical way we've lived, is at this point more powerful than the new things we're learning. Do you know what I'm saying? That's just the fact. And so that's why this being very conscious about the way we want to change and reorder our priorities in life and our values has to be very deliberate and conscious. To do it the way we've always done it doesn't take any effort. Have you noticed that? Right? It'll just happen. See, that's the problem. Right? It's not like there's anything wrong with you, that you keep kind of wanting to have a certain kind of life, but it keeps unfolding a certain way. It's because that energy of your conditioning is what is driving you. Right? Because that's the way we've always done it. Right? And it has its own energy, and it will just continue to unfold that way until this gets stronger. Right? And so it is important, quote unquote, that when we make mistakes, that we are present to what we're doing and look into them, so we can really, come to terms. So you can go, maybe there's a part of me that doesn't really want to go meditate. Right? She'd rather what? She'd rather sleep, or she'd rather do what? Go shopping, or she'd rather what? Watch the latest show on Netflix, right? As if somehow, right. So that's, again, that capacity when that comes up to really go, you've heard me say many times, a spiritual life is big picture, right? If there's no big picture, we will always lose out to small picture, right? The latest from Netflix will always look intriguing, right? And not only will it look intriguing, they have an incredible, very sophisticated public relations marketing thing, which is convincing you that anybody who's anybody it wants to watch this right now, right? I mean, so you know, it's not just your own stuff. It's like there's an energy that they're manufacturing to convince us that we got to watch this tonight, right? You know what I'm talking about? I mean, and we never go, well, hold on a second. You know, I mean, I've probably watched 1,000 things in this life that I had to watch tonight, and did it really make any difference in my life? You know, did it ever make any difference? I mean, whether I had really watched it that night or the next night, or not even at all. What if I just hadn't watched that? Right? I mean, is that clear? I mean, is anybody in this room saying, if I hadn't watched, what's that one everybody's watching? The King of Thrones? Game of Thrones. You know, that your life would be significantly altered? I mean, I didn't watch it, so I don't know. You see what I'm saying? We can say, yeah, it was very entertaining, it was well done, you know, it was probably all those things. And yet, if we said, in terms of value and meaning, you know, would it have made a difference? And if I really step back, could I have done something else which might have been more meaningful for me? You know, I mean, can you see this is hard? Can you see trying to get your mind moving in this direction? It's like, urgh. Because there's no reinforcement in our culture for living a life of value and meaning and looking at it this way. So if you're having trouble going, oh, you know, not watching Netflix, you know, right? It's even hard to think about it, isn't it? Right? I mean, I'm sure there are millions of people who go, the idea of not having Netflix in their life would seem like what? A descent into hell or something. And yet the truth is, and this is only for people who are more than 10 years old, Netflix, for most of human history, has not existed. Right? I mean, it may be hard to believe. And somehow human beings were able to lead decent lives. You know, enjoy each other in the evening. You know what I'm saying? So we have to kind of look at this energy that we get caught up in. You know, and it's a mundane kind of energy. Again, I am not saying that watching Netflix is like, you know, participating in devil worship or anything, you know, so please understand this is not what that's about. It's just understanding this bigger picture and kind of beginning to see that all the activities of our life in many ways are choices. Is that clear? They're choices. And that, you know, is there anybody home here, right? Kind of consciously making the choices for their life, for what's meaningful, for what's not meaningful, and therefore that relates to how I spend my time, or what I do, and what I pursue, what I think about. Because all that is conditioning us. Okay? The second commentary, the second point of now practice what is important is practicing Dharma over talking about it. So this is, again, this is very important. Again, it doesn't mean just talking about it. It means a lot. It could even, I mean, it's not just talking about it, blah, blah, blah. And it means not to study. And it doesn't mean, it means that the study and the talking about and the even thinking within ourselves about these practices, or how I'm doing with these practices, or whether I want to do these practices, or, you know what I'm saying? All that. Like, don't do any of that. Just practice. That's the most important thing. Don't think about practicing. Don't think about whether I want to practice or not. Should I meditate today? Should I? How's my meditation going? People say all the time, how's my meditation going? Always evaluating, always comparing. Now again, I'm not saying, obviously, that at some point that's not necessary, but people spend a lot of time ruminating about their spiritual life as opposed to practicing. And transformation only occurs, unfortunately, through practicing. Sometimes we have good practice sessions, sometimes we have terrible practice sessions. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the energy always be moving forward. Okay. That's how you get better at anything. Anybody ever get better at anything? What did you get better in? What? Oh, so you play perfect, yeah. Which meant what? Every day you what? Yeah. Did some days it go better than others? No. Did some days you enjoy it more than others? Yeah, of course. You see, there's up and... But yet, you would have never gotten anywhere if you hadn't just every day practiced. And eventually, what happened? Well, you got better at it. Anybody else in any kind of craft or skill or job? Crochet. When you started, what? Practicing. Yeah, and when you started, how'd it go? Horrible, right? And if you had thought about it, gee, this is horrible. I mean, did you enjoy being horrible? No. So not only were you horrible, but it was a miserable experience. And you could have thought, oh, I'm all thumbs, or I'll never get this, or, right? And maybe these thoughts would have come up, right? Plus many others. And yet, what happened? Yeah, you got good because you did what? You put the time in, and you didn't listen to that voice that was telling you, oh, this is, I'm all thumbs, I'll never get this is boring, this is stupid, what am I, you know what I'm saying, right? I could be, could be watching Netflix, I mean, wouldn't that have been easier? You just kind of flick on the thing and settle back, right? They make it so easy for us. Right? You don't do anything. This is you got to learn something. And there's a kind of a laziness in us, right? And we don't like to, we like to be successful, you see? That's part of that, we want to win, we want to succeed, right? And so for many of us, doing something that in the beginning, we're not successful at, right? You see? Now, it's interesting, children, and we were all children once, do much better at this, That's why I guess we send children to school, right? I mean, they do much better at making mistakes and just repeating and learning and, they seem to, it doesn't bother them so much, does it? They don't have such egos and they don't have such ways they want things to be, and they're just freer in terms of learning, right? But I think when we get older, kind of not getting something or not being good at something or making lots of mistakes is kind of an affront to us, It's often hard when you're older to kind of take up something new that you're really terrible at, right? And again, when you're terrible at something, it's not enjoyable, is it? Right? And so many people, when they sit down and begin to take on a meditative practice to quiet and calm and stabilize their mind, what is that like in the beginning? Anybody want to admit? What is it like? Is it what? Miserable. Because you're stuck with what? Your own miserable mind. Right? And that's just the truth, you see. Because we start where we are. Right? And so we start with our mind, with this untrained mind that just goes every which way. We're stuck with all the real thoughts and emotions that are rising in that we can kind of keep ourselves not looking at during the day, right? And all of a sudden, it's like, God, this is miserable, right? Netflix. There's the answer. So again, that's why we need this bigger picture, you see. We need this bigger picture of spirituality, of a spiritual path, of a meditative path, of practice. You need somebody who says, just stay with it, just do it every day, doesn't matter how you feel, you will get better at it. Right? So we need, like I'm sure you had a teacher, right? Who said to you, what? As you kind of despaired and it was terrible, who said to you what?
Well, you practice.
Right. I mean, right. This is not mystical. This is not metaphysical. This is very real. And it's kind of simple. Okay. So, it is important. Again, I'm not saying that you can't ever have conversations about your spirituality, meditation, and you can't study and all that, but it all has to be in the service of practice. If we're finding we love to talk about this stuff, and we love to read books about this stuff, and we love to watch every Dharma talk on the internet we can constantly consume, when internet, when we're driving in our cars, when we're going for walks in our iPod, you know what I mean? It's possible. And yet, how much actual time do we spend practicing? Right? And that's what we're talking about. It's got to be in balance. And to understand that at the end of the day, you will get most benefit from doing the practice. Is that clear? So that's what he's saying here. Any questions about that? Don't feel, again, if there's anything that's not clear about that, or in your own life what that means. Yes. Yeah, whatever one's practicing. If one's practicing loving kindness, if one's practicing patience, if one's practicing generosity, they got to be practiced. If one's practicing being selfless, thinking more about others and not oneself, that needs to be practiced. Where is it practiced? In life, with other people. When we're making choices and decisions, right? Or we're saying or not saying. Am I thinking just of myself or am I thinking of others? Am I holding on to my money? Am I holding on to my time? Am I holding on to my privacy? Am I holding on to just doing what I want to do? Or am I a generous person? Right? So often people think about generosity as something like to do with money, which it does, but it's really about a generous heart. That one is giving. One gives whatever one can. One gives one's time. One gives one's energy. One gives one's abilities. It's that idea that everything I have is here for others. Is that clear? So that's, if you're practicing generosity, do I just think it's a wonderful idea? Right? Or am I actually practicing it? Am I living it? Yeah, so Dharma, spiritual life, is meant to be practiced. In our tradition, we call what we do engaged Buddhism. It's engaged in life. It's not just something we do in the meditation hall. It's not just something we do here. It's not just something we do on our cushion at home or when we're reading our book at home. It's something we do in life. That's what we practice. Any other questions? Practicing Dharma over talking about it. The third is the cultivation of bodhichitta over other practices. So in this sense, again, bodhichitta, it sort of means the enlightened mind, the awakened mind, but in this sense, I believe he's talking about what's called relative bodhicitta, which means how is the wisdom mind manifesting in daily life, in the so-called relative world. And the key point here, it is manifesting as the mind of love and compassion. Okay? That this, he's saying, is the key practice. More important than all the other practices. And many people see it the other way. That the practice of developing mindfulness, concentration, insight into the nature of mind, the study of Dharma, really getting the view, these are what's most important, right? But here he's saying no. Not that these others aren't important, not that it's either or, okay? But that this cultivation of this kind heart, this caring heart, this loving heart, this compassionate heart, is the key practice. Because if you're cultivating that, really cultivating that throughout the day, you are automatically not cultivating self-centeredness. Right? You can't be doing both. Right? You're not cultivating self-absorption. You're not just totally absorbed in my problems, my issues, my needs, my wants, and how do I get them satisfied. Right? So you can't be doing that, or you're going to be doing that a lot less if you're open to all the beings you're encountering during the world, and as you go through your day, and in your mind is, I want to connect with everyone. I want to see everyone I encounter throughout the day as at least a friend. Right? If anybody is having a difficulty, I want to help them. If anybody is suffering, what can I do to relieve it? So this is a mind that is present to what's going on around them and is not just lost in our own self-absorbed drama. Is that clear? So what that does, because that frees up all this energy that has been lost in just reinforcing our sense as a separate self. You see, that's what we're lost in. We're just totally self-absorbed in the cocoon of my own needs and wants and hopes and dreams and the 8 worldly winds, how's it going for me today and how can I get, right? This encasement, and this is often why when we come to meditate, right, when we come to meditate, we find that we do not have a relaxed, just, open mind. We have a mind that's very disturbed, that's very agitated, right? Now, but if you look at really, where is all this disturbance and agitation coming from? It's really coming from the drama of ourself as it is in the world, every day. This self is worried about something, resentful about something, sad about something, wanting something, needing something, not, you know what I mean? If you look at the content of your mind, you will see that's what's agitating it. Right? I assure you that if your mind was very open and present to others in a loving, kind way, that's what you're cultivating, those emotions are not disturbing. Those emotions are calming. Those emotions are opening. The reason he's saying the cultivation of bodhichitta over the practice is he says, when you cultivate this loving, compassionate heart, you will make it much easier for yourself to develop a calm, clear mind that can have insight. Because it's sort of like now our minds are like hardpack. Hardpack is like you can't plant anything. If anybody's ever had hardpack, you can't plant anything because the earth is too hard, right? I can't even, put in the seeds. It's hardpack, right? So first you have to do what? Before you can plant anything, you have to cultivate it. You have to turn it over, right? So it's broken up. It's not so hard. It's not so flat, right? And now when it's turned over and it's softer and there's much more space in it, now there's room to plant seeds. And there's room for the seeds to sprout up. It's not so hard. And there's room for this seed to put down deeper roots because the soil has been turned over. And one of the main reasons why we can do these various kinds of practices that cultivate wisdom and insight and they don't take is because our minds have hardpack. So the seeds of our spiritual life do not take root. We need to soften it up. We need to soften the soil of our own minds. And there is no better remedy than the caring and concern toward others. And this is not the caring and concern to get anything, right? We're not trying to show people, oh, I'm a caring, compassionate person. Have you noticed? See, it's not that. This is a very open. We do it, it sounds almost contradictory because we're talking about this is the antidote to selfishness, but the truth is, we do it just for ourselves, right? Because it feels better to have positive emotions than negative emotions, right? It feels better to be generally concerned about others' well-being and others' happiness than always to be focused on my own. Anybody ever been in a relationship with somebody where they've been primarily focused on getting this other person to meet your needs? Would anybody admit to ever being in a relationship like that? Okay, you'll admit to it. How does that feel when you're always in that place of working it to get your needs met and dealing with the fact that the other person may not be meeting them? How does it feel? What? It's tiring. Constricted.
It's like a bottomless pit.
It's a bottomless pit. It'll never, a bottomless pit of joy?
No.
No, okay. A bottomless pit of what? Suffering. Anybody else ever been in those kinds of where, even for an hour or a day, or where you get stuck in it for days when it's just about me. They're not meeting my needs. They're not giving me what I want. How's it feel? Diminishing. Tiny. Self gets very tiny. Me. It's like that. If we really were to listen to it. Right? Is that clear? That's the truth, isn't it? And this is not like Buddhist truth or mystic. We all know this, right? This is the truth. On the other hand, when you're in a relationship with somebody, and again, not because you're trying to manipulate them to get something, but you really want them to be happy. And your really thought is, what can I do today to make them happy? In a genuine way. Is there any act of kindness or generosity? Is there anything I could say or do that would help this person, reduce their suffering, right? Make them happy. This is the other way. Has anybody ever had these kinds of thoughts in their life? Okay. People are nodding. How does it feel? Just notice how it feels. How does it feel? Good. Great. Open. Refreshing. Rewarding. Refresh. I like that refresh. It's like, whew. Oh, this is better. Right? You've been on that jag for, last 3 days. And all of a sudden you come out of it and you go, oh, I wonder what they're feeling. Gee, I wonder if they're happy or not. I wonder if there's anything that I'm doing that could be contributing to their suffering, and is there anything I could do that actually could contribute to their happiness? to their ease. Maybe I could make their life a little better. Right? It's refreshing, isn't it? We come out of this trance of misery that we've been living in for the last 30 minutes or 30 hours, right? Oh, this feels better. And yet what? Next day we're right back into it, aren't we? What? So, this cultivation of this loving, compassionate heart is a key point of this path of transformation. It makes life easier, and we feel better. And what are we giving up? You're shaking your head. What are we giving up? Nothing. Well, we're giving up our misery. Right? And we are giving up one important thing. We're giving up being right. Right? Yeah, if there's one thing, if there's torture, interrogation, it's the last thing we're going to give up. Right? Being right. And we cling to that, don't we? Even though what? Even though what? What's the truth? It hurts. It doesn't make us happy. It doesn't settle anything. And heaven forbid, the suffering you're having from being right is because you're in relationship with somebody who also wants to be right. Then you're really in trouble. Right? It's called war. Right? And at the end of the day, there's nobody giving out rewards to you. We think there's some kind of spiritual kind of somebody who's out there who's going, oh, he's right, she's wrong. There's nobody sees our misery. Nobody cares whether we're right. Isn't that true? The only one who cares is who? Me. And you notice this relationship between me and me being right. It's the same person. Can you see what a manufactured setup it is? Me generates a position, and me decides it's right. I mean, can you see how crazy that is? That's like, what's that like? That's like an actor deciding who's the best actor at the Oscars, Oh, well, I think I'm the best actor. That's an easy one. No, we have impartial, but not within ourselves. Is like, I'm the doer, but I'm also the one who grants the awards. And who do I always grant the award to? To me. Right? What a great life. Right? I go through life generating my own ideas, my own decisions, my own choices, and they're always right. We laugh, don't we? But it is the source of our suffering. And it's crazy. How can we always be right? I mean, mathematically, that's impossible. Right? Right. And why does the other two people in the room think they're right? I mean, how could that be? Because maybe there's no such thing as being right. Could that possibly be? Right? Perhaps there are just actions that are skillful and actions that are unskillful. Actions of body, speech, and mind that create happiness and well-being, and actions that create unhappiness. And oftentimes, the unskillfulness of our actions are shared by everyone in the process, aren't they? Isn't that true? Yeah. And when we come out of this kind of self-centered view of things and are willing to, again, be open, I have my view. Oh, and you have your view. You see? I'm interested in your view. Oh, and I'm interested in your view. Do you see how that feels? Can you feel how, when we're stuck in our view and our own rightness, it's like a prison, right? Yeah, but when we are always open to the viewpoints of others, that's what a bodhisattva is. It's always, oh, yeah, this is my view of the cup. You have your view, right? Is my view the right way because I'm seeing it from this side? No. I'm drinking tea. I like it. You might not. I mean, is there a right or wrong here? No, and yet we're always making things into right or wrong, true and untrue, without any real basis of any kind of firm reality criteria for deciding that. Now somebody may say to me, oh, but isn't killing wrong? And I would say, yes, it is, not to kill. But obviously, there are many people in the world who what? Who don't agree with me, do they? That's the truth too. So, how can I ever change anything if I'm not willing to see how life looks like from their side? I couldn't stand over here and just be right and pure, right? Or I could be willing to be open, right? To see that other people see it differently. They may have their suffering. They may have their hurt. They may have their anger. They may have their intolerance. They may be the product of their own causes and conditions of their life, of their culture. That's why they are the way they are. Right? And they think they're right, don't they? And I think I'm right. And when two people, when two individuals both think they're right, that could be what? Called a conflict, right? But when one of those people has a propensity toward anger and violence, that conflict can what? Escalate, right? And let's say one of those persons has a weapon, right? It could what? Escalate, right? But the seeds are the same, right? And that's all we're doing on the international level. We're just gets bigger and bigger, and the weapons get more and more powerful. But it's all stemming from the same thing, isn't it? And how, coming back to those two people who are in conflict, both thinking they're right, if you were going to counsel them, what would you say to them? What would you say to them? How would you work with them to help them get out of that, I'm right, you're wrong, I'm good, you're bad, and I need... Yeah, we want those two people to start communicating with each other and sharing their views and getting to understand each other. I mean, it's so simple, isn't it? That's the answer. The answer wouldn't be, oh, well, he's got a gun, why don't you go get one? Mm-hmm. And maybe get a more powerful one. So, I mean, where's that going to lead, right? The cultivation of bodhichitta over other practices. And last but not least, even though there's a couple more, but the last two, just quickly, are your mentor's personal guidance over teachings of scriptures and logic, and inner practice over changing the place you live. Again, this is just very traditional in the meditative tradition. Studying teachings and studying scriptures and hearing them is good, but that one needs a mentor. One needs to have a personal relationship with somebody who knows the teachings, knows the practices, and knows you. Right? So that the generalized teachings and philosophy can be personalized for the living situation of the student. Right? And so that transmission of the spiritual tradition is personal and relevant and appropriate and skillful. So always in this tradition, this personal relationship between student and teacher takes precedent over just intellectual study, etc. And inner practice over changing the place you live, you know what that means, right? We have to give up blaming our external situations for the condition of our minds, place, situation, people, etc. We have to understand that because the nature of our happiness and unhappiness, the nature of our well-being or our suffering, is all related ultimately to the state of our minds. Even when external conditions are aversive, even when external conditions are difficult, our minds don't have to be. We always have the power to generate an awakened mind, a calm mind, a loving mind, an understanding mind, because that comes from within us. But if we blame, if I hold you responsible for my state of mind, as I say, you made me do this, right? No, that's not true. You might have done something or not done something. You might have said something or not said something. But the reaction is coming from me, isn't it? That's the truth. We might have had a less than stellar childhood. Is that true? No. Things might have happened. But at a certain point, right, we have to understand what? That whatever happened is over. And it only lives now within my own mind. Right? And if I don't believe that I have the power to transform that mind, then I'm stuck. Can you see that? So it's not denying that things have an effect, but it's understanding that the way we process and deal with the things that are affecting us can be transformative. Just because someone's angry with me, I don't have to be angry at them. Right? Just because somebody is harsh with me, I don't have to be harsh with them. Do I? Of course not. Just because someone is unloving with me, I don't have to be unloving to them. I have that freedom. Right? Is that clear? That's what spiritual life's about, is knowing that we have this freedom to transform, to heal and transform. So, keep changing, many people keep changing spiritual paths. Try this one and that one, and these days there's so many around, you can just go spiritual hopping, and as somehow, that's going to change things. Change jobs, change place, change relationships, always thinking the problem is them. Right. It's right here. Yeah, it doesn't mean some relationships aren't better than others. Some jobs, please, don't go to extremes. but ultimately to understand I have that power. And that's a power you don't want to give away. You don't want to give away to others. You don't want to give that away to our past. We don't want to give that away to situations. Spiritual life is self-empowering. I feel the hook. Thank you all.